going to be hard to follow these acts. I wish I didn't have to go last. In fact, when Sarah said the craziest, most radical Tea Partier here, I thought that was my introduction. I started to get up. But I'm proud to stand with Rand here tonight. It's very exciting. It's an honor. It's almost as much as an honor as being on this stage with Kelly. The way we vote in the House is a little bit different than how they vote in the Senate. Now in the Senate, there's not many senators. There's only 100 of them. And they're up there for quite a long time. So everybody's recognized by face and by name. But in the House of Representatives, we vote with the voting card. We put this in a machine to vote. In fact, today, I had the honor of voting against, we were basically countermanding something that President Obama did. If you follow the news, you notice that when he appointed a few of these members to the National Labor Relations Board, he bypassed the Senate, he bypassed the laws, and he bypassed the Constitution. And he thought he could get away with it, but the courts, in fact, ruled that he had broken the law. Now, he'd like to say, well, all the rulings they've made are just fine, let's leave those be. But in the House of Representatives today, we passed a bill, and hopefully it'll pass the Senate, that says, no, that's not okay. You can't break the law and get away with it. And people ask him, can you make a difference as one vote? Does one vote matter in the House of Representatives? Well, that bill passed with 219 votes, and we needed 218 to pass. So that vote matters. Now, I haven't, I'm an engineer, but I haven't figured out how this card works yet. You can put it in any direction in the voting machine, and then you press a button. And one day, I bought a meal, and I accidentally gave the waitress this card instead of my credit card, and she took it back. She didn't notice. She swiped it. She came back. She said, your card is rejected, sir. There's already $16.8 trillion on it. And unfortunately, she's right. We've spent way too much money, and all the money gets spent with these cards in Washington, D.C. I want to tell you a little story about Rand's filibuster and what it was like to be there on Capitol Hill that day. So we finished our voting, and I was done at about 3 o'clock, and I had a window. I didn't have any meetings lined up after that vote. And I noticed, we watch C-SPAN in our office so we don't miss any votes. And on the TV, I see Rand has been there all day. And so I thought, well, that would be kind of fun to go over there and see what he's doing. And I texted his chief of staff, Doug Stafford, and I said, Doug, if I make the 15-minute walk from the House side to the Senate side, am I wasting my time? He said, well, I think this is about to wind down. This was, mind you, this was at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Doug Stafford thought Rand was winding down. Well, at 4 o'clock, I said, as usual, Doug doesn't know what Rand's doing. So I took my chief of staff over, and we went in the gallery, which is where you can, the balcony above the Senate floor where you can watch things. I didn't realize as a representative I was allowed to go on the floor of the Senate. In fact, in the gallery, I got a little tired and leaned on the railing, and they yelled at me there. So we are lowly representatives. But I texted Doug Stafford. I said, Doug, this guy doesn't look tired. I think this is going to go on for a while. And he said, well, he did just ask for a protein bar. I think this could go on for a while. So obviously he got his protein bar, and he kept going. Well, I thought, if Rand's eating a protein bar, I'm going to go eat dinner. So I left and went to Tortilla Coast, which is a restaurant where a lot of congressmen eat. It's back over on the House side. And I met 3 other congressmen there, and I said, we need to go back over there and stand with Rand. And this was at about 8 o'clock. So I took 3 more congressmen back with me, and we realized at that time that we could go on the floor of the Senate. And so that's what we did. When we got there were probably already 6 more congressmen there. And eventually there were 15 U.S. representatives. And this is pretty much unheard of, to have representatives come over and stand with a senator as he speaks. But Rand wasn't alone. There were a lot of other good senators that joined him. Ted Cruz joined him. And eventually our own senator from Kentucky, Senator McConnell, came over and joined him. And that was about 11:30. At 12:30, it was kind of sad. They said it's about to, end. And it was really sad because we had been there the whole time. We'd sneak into the cloakroom and do some tweets or some Facebook, and then we'd come back out and tell Rand to keep going. But it was a great night. It was monumental, and I don't think anybody, including Rand, understood how much of the nation's attention that he had garnered. But what I realized there that night, when I looked up in the gallery, there were lots of more people coming to visit. These weren't your tour groups. This was at midnight. There were people coming into the gallery to watch. And what I realized is half of them were Democrats and half of them were Republicans, but it didn't matter because this is about our Bill of Rights. This is about our Constitution. This is about America, and everybody cares about our country. It's not enough to stand with Rand just tonight or to stand with him during a filibuster. That's just one battle, and this is going to be a long war. And I realized when I got to Congress, it's going to be longer than I thought. In fact, the first time I voted no against my own party, I'll never forget that day. By the way, the newspapers are calling me Dr. No or Mr. No, but they're spelling it wrong because some of the people in Congress are calling me Mr. No, but it's K-N-O-W because I know what's in the bills. And that, when you know what's in the bills, you want to vote no. So the first time I voted no against my party, I sat down, and, just a simple freshman congressman, I voted no. I sit down there by myself. There's no assigned seating. And somebody from the whip staff comes over and sits down beside me and says, "Sir, you voted no." And I said, "Yes, I did." And she said, "Well, the party is voting yes on this bill." And I said, "Well, I'm voting no." And she said, "Well, there's some staff over there can tell you what's in the bill." I said, "No, I already read the bill before I came here," which kind of surprised her. And so the thing that scared me the most was the next thing that she said, or the biggest eye-opener. She said, "Well, we're not whipping this vote today, so you can vote how you want." And this was a staff member telling me it was okay to vote how I wanted on that bill. But things are definitely broken there. You'd like to think that when congressmen walk onto the floor of the House, they've read a bill. Unfortunately, a lot of times we don't have enough time to read the bill, but we do have a staff that can help with that. In fact, I stole some of Rand's best staff to read the bills, but he's got plenty of good staff. But you make an effort reading the bill, and you'd like to think other congressmen do too, but a lot of times they don't. They'll walk on there and say, "What's this bill about? What are we voting on today?" These are people that have been there longer than I have. And I'm thinking, you didn't read this? You didn't make an effort to see what the effect on our budget would be if we spend this money? You didn't make an effort to see if it's constitutional? Did you think about if it's good or bad for the 750,000 constituents that are back in your district? Obviously, they hadn't. And this really got me down. I got depressed for a while. And then I realized this is an opportunity. If somebody doesn't know what's in the bill, or they haven't heard from their constituents, that's an opportunity. In fact, I realized there was an opportunity when another congressman came up and said, "How are the phone calls running in your office on this bill?" And that told me he listens to the phone calls. So your phone calls matter. You don't think that they don't matter. The phone rings. It's ringing there in our office, and you can't avoid hearing it if you're meeting in your office. So the phone calls matter. The other thing that matters are these third-party groups, like Freedom Works. I'm not going to plug any particular one, but Club for Growth, Heritage. These congressmen, when you get on the floor, the other question they'll ask me sometimes is, who's scoring this vote? In other words, is this a vote that they're going to publish on the internet for all of you to see? And if it's scored, it really changes their behavior quite a bit if they know it's going to be transparent and broadcast. In fact, this week there was a vote on a bill that was going to spend some money. And they always have the best names. This was Protect America's Battlefields Act. That sounded like one I wanted to vote for. But the problem was, when you read it, it spends money, it's buying private property, and it's money that we don't have. Does it make sense to borrow that money from China to spend it buying private property that's already here? And so anyways, I decided I was going to vote against it. But on the floor, and there were probably 40 votes against it, But one of these organizations, I'm not sure which it was, one of these third-party organizations decided to score it, and there were 120 no votes on that bill. It was amazing. And so you are the grassroots that form those organizations, that support those organizations, and it makes a big difference in Congress. It helps some of these congressmen that want to do the right thing. It helps them to find their spine, I think. There's some bad legislation coming down the pike, in my opinion, and you see a lot of stuff on the internet, and I want to you have to sort out what's real and what's not real. You don't want to you don't want to be one of these people that sends all the emails to your friends and then finds out they're wrong. But one of the bills that's coming down the pike that I want to let you know about, it's called the Marketplace Fairness Act. Be very concerned if you see the word fair in any bill. Except for maybe the fair tax. That's probably a good one. But the Marketplace Fairness Tax, it's what's called the internet tax. And this would let states force businesses in other states to be regulated by that state. So if you had a business in Kentucky, instead of having to comply with just the tax regulations and the audits in Kentucky, you would have tax regulations and audits from 49 other states. And this is a bad idea. It's an expansion of government. It's going to create all the things I campaigned against. You'll have bigger government, you'll have more taxes, and a larger tax burden on the consumer. And at first I thought, this bill doesn't have a chance in the world. This will never pass. But they voted on it in the Senate. It's kind of a symbolic vote because it was just a resolution and it was attached to a budget. But to see how much support it had, it passed, I think, 75 to 24. There were only 24 no votes against this thing. Fortunately, both of our senators, Senator Rand Paul and Senator McConnell, voted against this thing. And you can guess what my vote's going to be when it comes to the House. But we're going to need your help to call congressmen, to call senators, and let them know that you don't want more taxes, you don't want more regulation on business. I want to just close with this story, which I stretched the truth just a little bit about the credit card story, but this does have $16.8 trillion in debt on it. This last story is true. Now, some things in Congress are broken. They're really broken. But part of the things that are not broken are things that Rand Paul is working on. And he's helping form a connection between the Senate and the House. We know there's dysfunction between Republicans and Democrats. It's just like a big red versus blue football game up there sometimes. And the constituents get lost in the huddle somewhere. But the other dysfunction that I've noticed is between the Senate and the House. But Rand has regular meetings where he brings senators and he brings House members together. And that's the only way we're going to fix what's broken on Capitol Hill. So one night we had this meeting. It was at a townhouse that Senator Jim DeMint has. And this was right before he left the Senate. None of us knew he was leaving. And a lot of the guys that always stand with Rand, Senator Ted Cruz, Senator Mike Lee was there, Senator Ron Johnson was there, and of course Rand Paul was there. And there was a debate that kind of broke out at the table. And it was between Mike Lee, who's a lawyer, but he's a good lawyer, a lawyer from Utah. His expertise is constitutional law. And the other guy debating him was Ted Cruz. And I couldn't follow half of what they were saying, but they started talking about the Supreme Court case called McCullough. And it's McCullough versus Maryland. Now, I went back and looked it up on Wikipedia because I didn't remember this from the 8th grade. But McCullough is where Justice Marshall said the power to tax is the power to destroy. So it's a very important case, and it was also about the federal bank. But I still didn't know what they were talking about that night. They just kept saying McCullough this, McCullough that, McCullough this. And Jim DeMint leaned over to me and he said, "That's okay, Thomas. When I first got here, I thought McCullough was a chainsaw too." Anyways, thank you for your support. You do matter, your calls matter, keep them up. Thank you.
We are very lucky to have representatives from the Commonwealth of Kentucky that actually represent the people.